Hello and welcome to What's the Story Ghost. I'm your host Annette.
And I'm Steven.
And today we are on episode 86.
Pick up sticks. I forgot to think ahead. And that's what we got. Just be glad it's clean.
Your mom listens to this podcast. Today we are not going anywhere really.
Joe, exit jingle.
I just mean we're none of these places are. Oh no, they kind of are. But do you know what? I think I'll just tell the story.
Would you? Yeah.
Will we crack on?
Yeah, crack on.
I can honestly say some of my best memories from my teen years are those memories from evenings spent in the carnival that came to Cork Park in Clondalkin, or going all the way to the RDS in Dublin to Funderland. But because I'm the type of person to watch Final Destination before getting on a plane or Poseidon before going on my honeymoon cruise, I can't just enjoy the nice moments. No, I'm the type of person to watch Final Destination 2 before going to an amusement park. Or I go into deep thought about the fact that given the amount of carnival rides I've been on, it's a miracle I've never had an accident. As it turns out, when I looked up the statistics, I might have been acting a tad melodramatic. In 2019, an estimated 1,299 ride-related accidents resulting in injuries occurred in amusement parks across the US. Now, I'm not saying that's not a crazy number. 1,299 people would slap me across the face if I did say that. But when we think about how many visitors carnivals or amusement parks see each year, the number seems small. 1,299 ride-related injuries is about 3.7 injuries per 1 million visitors, at least in 2019. This was the rabbit hole I fell down this week which led to this episode. I began to wonder, what happens when carnivals or amusement parks, once so full of music, laughter, first kisses and friendships forged through facing fears together, what happens when the music stops, the bumper cars rust and the Ferris wheel dies? May 1st, 1986 should have marked the opening day for the Pripyat amusement park. For those who may not know their history, Pripyat is located a little over 5 kilometres from the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Instead, the park was opened for one day, April 27th, as a distraction for those preparing to evacuate the Ukrainian city following the April 26 Chernobyl disaster. The park contains a large Ferris wheel, now synonymous with the deserted city, bumper cars, a parachute ride, a shooting range and more. These rides now sit rusting as grass and shrubs grow through the cracked concrete floor. The park's time was short, but dark tours are held, so she'll live on in rust, radiation and weathered carnival bunting, instead of music, the sound of laughter and the smell of hot dogs or popcorn. The next place, though open for longer, was completely and utterly doomed before it had even opened. The history of Lake Shawnee Amusement Park dates back to the 18th century, when Mitchell Clay and his family migrated to the west and set up an 800-acre farm where they raised their 14 children. Disaster struck the Clay family in 1783 when a Native American tribe butchered 2 of the children while Mitchell was out hunting. They kidnapped another one of the boys, Ezekiel, only to burn him at the stake. Clay retaliated. With the help of other settlers, he tracked down several Native Americans and killed them. The scarred homestead was never the same. Connolly Snidow purchased the property during the 1920s, but couldn't have known that the land had witnessed decades of bloody unrest. He built rides and attractions like circular swings, a water slide, a dance hall, a speakeasy. He also added a pond and a swimming hole complete with canoes. But somewhere along the line, things started to go wrong. Lake Shawnee began to get a bit of a reputation for being dangerous. A little girl died on the swings and a boy drowned in the pond. All told, roughly 6 visitors died during the amusement park's brief history. The attraction was abandoned in 1966. Slowly the blue, red and green rides faded and flaked. Undergrowth soon engulfed their rusty skeletons. After 20 years, another businessman approached Lake Shawnee. Gaylord White thought the Sleepy Meadows seemed ideal for future neighbourhoods, but as construction crews tore into the grass and soil, they unearthed bones and Native American artefacts. It transpired the amusement park had sat atop an ancient burial ground, and most of the skeletons belonged to children. Archaeologists believe the remains had been there long before settlers had moved west. It's rumoured that on quiet nights, the cries of the children slain in the Clay tragedy can be heard as the wind blows. Now, it could just be the wind, but, unlikely. Next on our list of abandoned amusement parks is Joyland. This was once the biggest amusement park in central Kansas. However, it now lies abandoned and vandalised. It was established in 1949 and ran continuously for 55 years, until it was closed in 2004 due to economic difficulties and safety issues. There were more than 24 rides at the park, including a 1949 roller coaster, a miniature train built between 1905 and 1910, and a mammoth military band organ, or Wurlitzer style 160, built around 1905. I've included a link from the website Mental Itch. I assure you, it is worth a look. Joyland looks like it's frozen in time. Some of the photos are a combination of creepy and eerie, but one in particular reminds me of the scene from the movie Big Fish with Ewan McGregor. It looks like an old, abandoned version of the town of Spectre. Run-down buildings on either side of what was once probably plush green grass are now just overgrown and dead. The park was doing very well, and it was loved by generations of families, until an awful lot of ride-related injuries and not ride-related deaths occurred. One employee, Kevin Briley, was injured by a roller coaster. He was under the ride trimming grass when he just happened to stand up as the roller coaster passed over him and struck him in the head, ending in a terrible fate. Another employee, named Michael King, aged 17, died for the price of admission. Witnesses and park employees told authorities that 4 suspects entered Joyland at about 10 p.m. through a back gate to the park, where they were confronted by employees and told that they had to go to the front gate and pay admission. The 4 were allowed to walk through the park, where they had other confrontations with employees and park patrons. At a bridge near the middle of the park, it said that the 4 became involved in a fight with park employees, including King, but the fight was broken up minutes later and the 4 were told to leave. Shortly thereafter, witnesses told authorities they saw King fall, while surrounded by 4 men in the parking lot, and then the 4 ran off. It transpired that they had stabbed him, and he died from his injuries. In 2004, 13-year-old Elizabeth Schmitz was on the Ferris wheel with 2 friends when the safety bar holding them in unlatched. Elizabeth, despite one of her friends trying to catch her, fell more than 30 feet and sustained multiple injuries to her head, arms and legs. And then in 2015, long after the amusement park was closed down, a group of teenagers were trespassing on the property. They ventured to one long-forgotten ride called the Log Jam, and a 14-year-old girl was climbing along the equipment when she slipped and fell, tumbling down the slide and another 15 feet to a metal support beam below. She suffered a punctured lung, broken ribs, and a damaged spleen. Maintenance work was performed in 2006 in the hopes of reopening the park, but it never occurred, and then apparently the park was purchased in 2018 with plans to turn it into a concert venue / wedding venue, but I really think someone needs to burn some sage or something before they try and reopen the place. Magic Harbour Amusement Park is another abandoned amusement park just 4 miles south of Myrtle Beach. Roller coasters, bumper cars, tilt-a-whirls, arcades, hedge mazes, Ferris wheels and other all-ages rides were all part of the attraction, but it never really took off. Financial issues, change in ownership and deaths attributed to the park's failure. After the park closed on Labour Day 1976, an ex-employee, Franklin Loftus, shot and killed the park's owner Harry and his 16-year-old stepson Carl outside their trailer on the grounds of the park. Harry's wife Carol only survived the attack because she managed to hide under the trailer. For years the case went unsolved, making it the oldest cold case in Horry County's history until Loftus was charged. It was determined Loftus shot Harry over a wage and workman's compensation dispute after Loftus, a carpenter for the park, was injured on the job. Loftus was given 2 life sentences for the murders and denied parole multiple times. Harry's surviving wife had no desire to keep up Harry's plan of expanding Magic Harbour, and the park went into foreclosure was bought back by the banks and then changed hands multiple times until it was sold to Jeffrey Thompson, president of the largest amusement park operation in Europe. It seemed like the park's luck was about to turn around with Thompson managing, but in 1984 tragedy would strike the park again. 13-year-old Sherry Lynn Depew was launched out of the park's Black Witch roller coaster. She died from her injuries and her father sued Magic Harbour for $12 million, claiming negligence by the park for failing to supervise the ride properly. Thompson tried to claim that the girl had failed to stay seated and follow safety guidelines for the ride, but the bad publicity alone was enough to hurt the park's reputation once again. In the mid-1990s, the park was closed and the land was bought by the neighbouring campground, resulting in all of the buildings and rides being completely demolished. Hearing disembodied laughter or screams of adrenaline is to be expected for those sensitive enough to hear them as they walk through an abandoned, long since closed amusement park. But let's be honest, for an urban explorer, a keep out sign is considered more of a suggestion than an actual warning. But what about the amusement parks that are still open and taking in patrons of the living, as well as those patrons who paid for a lifetime admission? Universal Studios Hollywood, somewhere I have not yet had the pleasure to visit, seems to have a little bit more to offer than what you see in the brochure. The ghost of Frank Stites reportedly haunted the backlot long after his death. He was seen wearing vintage aviation gear, the clothing he wore during his last performance as a stunt pilot on March 17, 1915. A Universal Studios employee, John Murdy, can attest to hearing what he described as diabolical giggling one night while he was tasked with bringing back Halloween Horror Nights to Hollywood after a 5-year hiatus. He must have already been a little on edge because, in his own words, he bolted when he heard the laughter. Now, a giggling ghost doesn't sound all that bad. But what if you had a resident ghost whose mischievous behaviour was rumoured to be the cause of several deaths? Kings Island Amusement Park in Mason, Ohio allegedly has several ghosts that are said to haunt the location. But the most famous of the Kings Island ghosts is probably Tower Johnny. He is said to have haunted the Eiffel Tower replica after falling from an elevator shaft during a grad night party back in 1983. Electrical issues at the park are often attributed to his mischief, which sadly ties into one of the real-life tragedies of Kings Island, known locally as Black Sunday. Because Tower Johnny is often blamed for the electrical malfunctions of the park, when 3 people were accidentally electrocuted in a fountain, and a 4th fell to her death while attempting to view the accident while on an aerial ride, Tower Johnny got the blame for that one. But because I'm inquisitive, I did some digging and found an article written by KI Ghost Guy on KICentral.com. The article not only tells us what happened, but as one other member, Thrill_Biscuit, commented, to put a real face on a human being whose tragic death has been for so many years passed around as an ever-changing ghost story, restores a great deal of respect and desensitizes myth with facts. KI Ghost Guy's article states, on May 13, 1983, 17-year-old John Harter of Delaware, Ohio, was visiting Kings Island for one of its annual grad nights. Harter, as well as other students from Delaware Hayes High School, was set to graduate June 5th. His birthday was May 27th. Anyways, he had indeed been drinking that fateful night. Whether he smuggled it into the park or drank before entering isn't known. Harter rode some rides that night with friends, as well as his girlfriend Pam Donnelly. However, he became separated from his friends. At about 10:15 p.m, John made his way up the 50-foot platform of the Eiffel Tower and then proceeded to climb a 5.5-foot fence onto the interior emergency stairwell. Investigators believed he climbed up a bit, then climbed onto a beam near the elevator shaft. While standing there, however, he was hit by the counterweight instead, lost his balance and plunged 50 to 60 feet onto the top of the rising elevator. The impact killed him instantly. The Warren County coroner was quoted in the Columbian Dispatch as saying that the cause of death was a skull fracture and several broken bones. His girlfriend and friends were walking around the tower base looking for him when he fell, although they did not see him fall. Abandoned and broken, there's something so unnatural about seeing an amusement park after the last time a bag of candy floss will ever be handed over to an overtly excited child, or the last group of girls link as they walk through from one ride to the next, trying to encourage an ounce of bravery in case one of the boys from their class is watching. Whether abandoned or still active in service, amusement parks or carnival rides that move from location to location are probably covered in residual energy left behind by joy and excitement, and in some cases pure fear. It's no wonder people want to go again and again. What do you think of that story?
That was a cool selection of stories.
I think you need to see some of the photographs to go along with these haunted locations or these abandoned locations, because there's nothing right in seeing. Like Pripyat broke my heart because but if
so
you look
only open for one day.
It was supposed to be open 5 days after, so they only actually opened it. They opened it a little
for
early
locals,
for just to distract people while, you know, I don't know if there were sirens going off in the background, or, you know, the military come in and like kids get frightened and adults get frightened, and I think they just opened it just as something to do while they were doing the evacuation process. It's just so sad looking. That's actually a really bad example.
I wonder if there's any ghost stories related to Mosney.
Oh God, I'd say so. There's parts of Pripyat that you cannot, like, they do haunted tours and stuff, but you can't actually go anywhere near. I think they said the Ferris wheel has a ridiculously high reading on the, is it a Geiger meter?
Geiger counter.
Geiger counter. It's still very radioactive. And in my head I'm like, okay, so if it's really green, does that not mean it's good? Because obviously grass is able to grow, and that's got absolutely nothing to do with it. In some cases
the grass is radioactive.
Yeah, I was like, okay, so maybe those kind of ghost tours wouldn't be for me, but the rest of them, it would be very interesting to kind of just take a walk through history, because the likes of Joyland or Lake Shawnee, not so much, but definitely Joyland, it literally just looks like people just got up and walked out. There is one that I don't know if it's that I couldn't pronounce the name of the place, so I felt like I couldn't cover it, but there's one in Japan that has a lake in the middle of it. And there's an urban legend that there's a woman who gave birth right beside the lake, and she gave birth to like a serpent baby, and now the serpent baby lives in the lake. And I'm like, nope, not for me, thank you very much.
Speaking of Japanese amusement park,
okay,
Takeshi's Castle, they're making a remake of it.
Oh really? Oh, but is it going to be like Gladiators, where it's like,
I really hope not.
Let's all just appreciate Gladiators for what it was. It was terrible,
80s,
trashy 80s TV
nostalgia TV.
But it's kind of like that time you asked me to watch that movie with you, and you were like, it's a great movie, but you remembered that movie from when you were in your 20s or even in your teens.
I think you're talking about As Good As It Gets.
Is that what it was? And I was like,
Jack Nicholson.
I was just like, Stephen, there's nothing okay about this movie, and you
Yeah,
were
no,
like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I think we watched it in like 4th class in school, or some
Stop.
4th year in school, I should say.
Oh, that's okay.
Where everybody was like, he said a bad word. He's belittling a minority.
It's kind of like all of the Not Another Teen Movie kind of style movies. Is this what passed for good movies when we were teens and in our 20s? Because I was only saying there to my friend the other day, I was like, I don't know if everybody else gets this, but with the network that I'm on, I get like €2 or 2 tickets for €10 for the cinema, and I'm like, Daddy, I can be a regular cinema goer again. And I'm like, how much money did I waste in Liffey Valley Cinema on crappy movies that I can't watch again? Because if I watch them, I'm like, there's so much wrong with this.
I know, it was a really good story. It was interesting. My mind kept drifting back to the only long-standing amusement park, which is, you know, is, why is Fern Gully in my head? Mosney.
I don't think that's a park anymore.
No, it's not.
No.
It hasn't been a park for years.
No, it's living accommodation now.
Yeah.
Did you ever go when you were younger? I think we went
Mosney?
once. Yeah.
Loads of times.
I think we went once.
Loads of times.
And I remember we used to be able to walk by and like see people swimming.
I was just about to comment on that. You can walk by and see people swimming, but somebody in their ill-fated decision decided to make a swimming pool with a glass wall and then put the restaurant on the side. So you're having your dinner, and you actually have to look through the restaurant into the swimming pool. And I think part of the building is like you can walk past the wall, but the restaurant is that as well. So you're having your dinner, and some nappy
legs
or that even worse, just kind of swimming past you, and you're like trying to eat your chicken nuggets and chips.
What's that sound from?
American Horror Story that's in my head, and
No.
sometimes I think it's kind of like a SpongeBob. So,
Yeah.
See, unless I put the twang on it, you
Yeah.
don't really know. Did you get any characters for me?
I was just thinking of people who could run amusement parks, and I've got Hugh Jackman because he ran a circus.
He did.
And then, I had somebody else. Kathy Bates,
As
the survivor.
Harry's wife,
Yes.
Carol, who hid under the... Yes, like her.
Okay.
I fell down a rabbit hole. This was a rabbit hole. I actually started looking at this because I was looking at statistics for something else, but this is how I come up with half the stories. I do, however, and I put up a thing, I put up a reel on Instagram. I have to stop doing my research in the evening, Stephen. I'm not able for the dark. Or, you know, I could just turn the kitchen light on. That's also another option. We finish up there?
Say your words.
So thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I will of course include the links in the show notes, and if you have any questions on this or any other episode, our socials are What's the Story Ghost on Instagram and What's the Story Ghost at gmail.com if you have any personal stories you would like to share. And those are all my words.
Exit jingle.
Exit jingle. Blah, blah, boo, boo, blah, da, 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 la, la, la.
Yeah, that one.
Oh, okay, because I don't know the rest of it.
Bye.
Are there words?
Oh yeah.
Or is it literally just a really
I got-
creepy
it's
sound?
just a really creepy sound.
I think it's a good sound.